Well, we need our clock has been removed, which is sometimes a good thing.
Went from the big to the small of it. Just very conditional, now to
Kaplan's very expensive.
oh, they went from the big to the small.
All right. Okay, so today we're gonna finish up Parashat Seitzei because we have some misconceptions that need to be clarified here. And the first one is in Perek Chaf Gimel Pasuk Gimel 23:3, which is on page 1054. 1054. Just if we could close that door over there because of the noise outside. Thank you. Okay. So here the Torah says, Lo yovo mamzer b'kal Hashem. A mamzer, page 1054, one line from the top line. Lo yovo mamzer b'kal Hashem. Gamdor asiri lo yovo lo b'kal Hashem. Even the 10th generation, which means forever. And the art scroll just translates mamzer as mamzer. Now, in the world at large, a mamzer is generally translated as a bastard, which is not an accurate translation, because in the world at large, a bastard is referred to as any child born out of wedlock. And that's not the halacha. In Torah, a mamzer, first of all, what does it mean he's not allowed to enter the congregation of Hashem? A mamzer is 100% Jewish. He's not allowed to marry a regular Jewish woman. He can marry a woman who's a mamzeres, a female mamzer, but he cannot marry a regular Jewish woman. That's number one. Number two, Jared, you want to come sit over here? You can sit, there's seats over here if you want. Number two, what the definition of a mamzer is primarily a married woman who has been involved with another man. If they have a child, the child is a mamzer. A married man, since by the letter of the law he could marry more than one wife, by Torah a man is allowed to marry up to 18 wives. We don't nowadays because the secular laws prohibit, and there was also before the secular laws there was the Cherem Rabbeinu Gershom, that you're not allowed to which is accepted by the Ashkenazi communities. A man can marry more than one wife. So, for example, let's say a married man has an affair with a single girl, and they have a child. The child's not a mamzer. Is prohibited. The affair was prohibited according to the Cherem by Torah law and by Cherem Rabbeinu Gershom. There may be other prohibitions involved, but the child is not a mamzer. If the father is a kohen, the child's a kohen. And if he could become the Kohen Gadol, in other words, there's zero halachic limitation on that child. There's a social stigma, perhaps, but there's zero halachic limitation. Whereas if a Kohen marries a divorcee, that child is a cholol. He's considered a non-Kohen. Essentially, he's a non-Kohen. A mamzer, but again, the cholol can marry a regular Jewish woman. Just that his children are also chalolim, so they're non-Kohens. But a mamzer who is born in an adulterous relationship, where that means a married woman was involved. Whether the man is married or single is immaterial. If the woman is a married woman and she has a child with somebody other than her husband, that child is a mamzer, and that child is not allowed to marry he's not allowed to marry a regular Jewish woman. That is the definition of a mamzer. In the world at large, a mamzer is a bastard is somebody born out of wedlock. In halacha, a child born, if let's say two people live together and have a child, a Jewish man and a Jewish woman have a child, there is zero halachic limitation on that child. And if the father's a Kohen, he's a Kohen. It doesn't mean it's permissible for them. Let's not make a mistake. It doesn't mean it's permissible. It just means that there is zero halachic limitation on it. And a mamzer has a specific prohibition. It's not a good thing to be a mamzer. It's not something that anybody could help if they were born as a mamzer. But if he is a mamzer, then he has got the limitation. He can only marry another mamzer. The answer to your question is, you're right. It's not his fault. You're right. But the what do you call it? It's not his fault. But that's the law. Well, go ahead. What's your question?
So if two mamzerim get married, are their children all
Yes,
mamzerim,
100%. 100%.
Right, so
Yeah, it never ends. It's never. When the Torah says up to the 10th generation is only a number, because 10 is a number of it's the number that goes beyond the individual numbers. 10th generation doesn't mean 10th generation. It means forever. Cannot get out of mamzerness. So I thought you were going to ask the question that everybody always asks. Like, what's his fault? You wondering that? Jared, that's a question. Everybody always asks that about a mamzer. And the truth of the matter is, if somebody's born in Cleveland, what's it his fault? Why is it his fault? Now he's born in Cleveland. What was his fault? Because his parents lived in Cleveland. So, or if Cleveland isn't bad enough for you, all right. What about somebody who's born? What about somebody who's born to parents who are poor? What about somebody who's born with a genetic illness? That his mother has a genetic illness, now it's been transmitted to him. The mamzer is a spiritual illness. Before you even get into reincarnation and perhaps he was a man who produced mamzerim in a different lifetime and therefore he has to come back as a mamzer and suffer now to atone for his previous lifetime. Before we even get into that, we see even in the physical world, this goes on all the time. Not only in the physical world, even in the Jewish world. Would you like to be a Kohen? Is anybody here a Kohen, by the way? Would you like to be a Kohen? I'm a Kohen. Right? What's it your fault? Because your father wasn't a Kohen, so you're not a Kohen? That's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. Would you like to be rich? I would like to be rich. What's it my fault that my father wasn't rich? What's it your fault that your father wasn't rich? And this guy's father was rich. So the question of fairness or not fairness, people limit it to the mamzer. But what about anybody else? I wanted to play in the NBA. But somehow, instead of being 6'6", I ended up 5'6", or 6'8", I ended up being 5'8". I'm disqualified. I wanted to be a pilot, but I'm afraid of heights. It's a problem. I was born afraid of heights, and my eyes aren't perfect, so it's not fair. Nothing's fair. Nothing's fair and everything's fair. That's the way it works. It's like the guy who said, somebody once asked a wealthy man how he became very wealthy. So how did I come wealthy? How did I come wealthy? When I was 9 years old, I was running a paper route. When I was 13, I was mowing lawns. And when I was 16, I was working at McDonald's. And when I was 22, my rich uncle died and left me a pile. So why did you have the rich uncle and I didn't have the rich uncle? You understand? So, but people always ask that about the mamzer specifically, and it seems like unfair. That's the limitation. That's the first thing I want to clarify. Now, the next one, which is also, this needs a clarification. Take a look at Perek Chaf Gimel, Pasuk Yud Tes. Pasuk 19. So here it says, it's Pasuk 18. Lo siya kedesha mi bedos Yisrael, page 1056, 8 lines from the top. Lo siya kedesha mi benos Yisrael, a woman should not be a kedesha. How does he translate it? Promiscuous woman. That's a good translation. V'lo yeh kadesh mi b'nei Yisrael. And a man should not allow, that means that people should not allow themselves to be engaged in the oldest profession in the world. And then it says, Lo savi esnan zodna u'mechir kelev beis Hashem Elokecha. You do not bring the exchange for a harlot. That means, let's say there's a harlot, and she sells her services in exchange for a sheep. And then she wants to donate that sheep to the Beis HaMikdash. Torah says that sheep is off limits. There's something distasteful about that. Umechir kelev, something that you exchange for a dog. I have a dog, I trained my dog for you, I gave you my dog, and you gave me a sheep. And now I want to donate that sheep to the Beis HaMikdash. There, the Torah says, it's also distasteful. Something came in exchange for a dog. L'chol neder ki tov as Hashem Elokecha gam shem. That's an abomination. In other words, a man made a pledge. I want to donate a sheep to the base of Mikdash. Once you've made that pledge, you have to bring a sheep as a korban. You have to donate the sheep. I want to bring a sheep as a korban ola to the base of Mikdash. I haven't got money, but I got a dog. So I walk over, I say, you know what? Do me a favor, Ben. Here's my dog. Give me a sheep. Then I take the sheep to the base of Mikdash. I'm fulfilling my pledge. Says the Torah, you can't do that. I could buy your sheep. I buy the sheep from Ben, take the sheep, go to the base. That's fine, but not in the garden. I could barter you for my dining room table. I can't barter for my dog. And a harlot can't barter her services for a sheep and then use that sheep for it. Why not? Says the Torah, because it's an abomination. Why? What about it? It's certainly distasteful. Why is it called an abomination? And I understand that even if you say by the harlot there's an abomination, okay, that we understand that's really yucky. What about exchange for a dog? I mean, a dog is so bad. It's so bad that you exchange a dog for a sheep.
It's such a low level.
Well, but what, so that level that it's called an abomination? I understand that once you get to when you talk about the harlot with immorality, so you're going to use the expression abomination. Why with the dog? What did the dog do? Okay, it's a dog. Yeah, okay, dogs are dirty, whatever it is. What's really going on here? The answer is, why would a harlot go and don't, that seems to be a bit of a contradiction in life values. On the one hand, she's a zona, on the other hand, she goes and she's donating korbanos to the base of Mikdash. Now, why would she do that? Why would she do that?
I mean, she's literally selling herself in order to get a sheep and then giving it to...
You're right. Why would she do such a thing? Why would she give a sheep? Why would a guy exchange the dog? Why would somebody? Once you know why he would, then we understand why the Torah doesn't like it. Because it's the worst thing a person could do. You know why? She's trying to rationalize her behavior. She's involved in this profession, and one of the things she's going to do is she'll take from one of her customers, she'll take a sheep, bring it to the base. Now we're all good. As long as I give a korban, I can continue what I'm doing. A guy's got a Doberman who's chewed up a few people, and he feels bad about it. So he trades his Doberman for a sheep just to cover his to soothe his conscience. That idea of soothing the conscience is what's abominable. We have a conscience. The conscience was given us for a reason. Use the conscience to change behavior. That's why we have a conscience. A guy gets a conscience, and well, now I'm okay. It's like imagine a guy who's an extortionist. The guy's an extortionist, but he gives some of the money to tzedakah. And the idea of Jewish Robin Hoods doesn't work, or what we call Ruvain Hood, right? There is no Ruvain Hood in Judaism. The idea of steal from the poor, steal from the rich, and give to the poor. It sounds great. Steal from the rich, give to the poor. We don't. And then you're going to give it to the poor. That's just rationalization. You're rationalizing. That's not acceptable, and certainly not to be Dennis Moore. You know who Dennis Moore was? Never heard of Dennis Moore?
No.
Dennis Moore was a Monty Python. Dennis Moore, riding through the night. You never heard of Dennis Moore? Dennis Moore would steal from the poor to give to the rich. You don't remember Dennis Moore from Monty Python? So any of this stuff is unacceptable.
How was business for him?
Yeah, I don't know how he succeeded. That was Monty Python, a bunch of nutcases, but they were funny. So Dennis Moore, what he go? The Torah says that you can't go in. Don't rationalize. That's what's an abomination. I want to go on. Somebody had a question. Okay, let's go on because there are a few more. Yeah, please use.
So how spiritually clean the business has to be in order to...
Good question.
tzedakah?
How clean does it have to be? It has to be clean enough that you feel. Look, mistakes could always be made. Anybody can make a mistake, but it has to be clean enough that you're pretty sure you haven't done anything wrong. I mean, if part of your business is where you know you're doing something wrong, that's problematic. Could it be you've done something wrong? Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. We're not talking about. But if I'm running a business and it's a cash business, I know I'm doing something wrong. Yeah, don't do Hashem any favors by getting the money in an inappropriate way. Those aren't your favors. Do it right. Run your business. Everybody has, listen, at the end of the day, anybody who's an employee, you know, you took a break here, you took a break there. You like, you know, sometimes people push the envelope a little bit. We try to do the best we can, and there's a certain amount that's acceptable. It's acceptable to take to go to the bathroom, and acceptable to take a 5-minute break to go out and have a breather, go smoke a cigarette, whatever it is. It's not acceptable to take a 45-minute break. That's not a break. That's a vacation. There's a line between you know, taking advantage, say you know. And by the way, the rule in business in general is, if you don't know, ask. Hey, boss, is it okay if I take this stapler home? Is it okay if I take the couch home? Just ask. You don't know, ask. Okay? Now, take a look at page 1058. This is also a source of confusion. Fourth line from the top. And we're going to see two interesting ideas here. And this is going to go back to what we were speaking about, the mamzer also. Ki yikach ishisha uve'olah, a man marries a woman, they live together. V'haya im lo simsa chen be'einav, she does not find favor in her eyes. Ki matza be'ervas davar, he found some inappropriate behavior. V'kosav lo sefer krisus, he should write her a document of severing, otherwise known as a get. V'nosan biyoda, he gives it to her. V'shulcha mibeso, he sends her out of his house. This is the divorce document called a get. And by the way, the only time in the entire Hebrew language where the letters gimel and tes appear next to each other is in the word get. The only time the combination in any word that you have a gimel and a tes together, the letter gimel and letter tes, is the word get, which symbolically means this is the last time you're going to see them together. And it doesn't appear in any other word in Lashon HaKodesh, where in the word itself you have a gimel followed by a tes. Now, a man gets married, and you want to dissolve a marriage. By non-Jews, there is no concept of a document, as opposed to by Noahide law, if a couple is decided we are married, that is Noahide marriage. At the point they decide we are no longer married, the marriage is dissolved. In Torah law, a get has to be given. A halachic get has to be given, which is, by the way, very, very myriad halachas and details in how to write a get. It has to be written by an expert. The names have to be spelled properly. Otherwise, the get is not valid. You have a situation where a couple may have had a civil divorce. They're not particularly religious, and they had a civil divorce, but no get was given. Until the get is given, they are 100% a married couple. 100% married until the get is given. If this woman then goes and marries another man, she's committing adultery. Until and unless she has a get, that's provided they had a kosher marriage to begin with. And a kosher marriage means that they had two witnesses, both of who chew their cuds and have split hooves. There's a kosher marriage. Just kidding. They have two kosher witnesses. And if they did not have a marriage, the marriage is not dissolved with a get, they are still married. Hold the questions for a few minutes. Now, the question that everybody asks is, why is it that the man, and by Torah law, a man could divorce his wife against her will? By Torah law, a man could walk up to a woman and say, Hareya, you are divorced, and he could force her to take the get. He gives her the get, she's divorced. Rabbinic law says you can't. Can't divorce against her will. By Torah law, you could divorce a woman against the will. Number one. Number two, a wife cannot divorce her husband. A husband could divorce his wife. Why is it that the man, in Torah, the man gives the get? It creates there are certain issues that are created, whether the recalcitrant husband who doesn't want to give his wife a get, unless they pay, or he just doesn't want to give his wife a get. There was one case here in Israel where a husband was unhappy with his wife. Apparently she misbehaved. And the secular courts in Israel back up the rabbinical courts. And the rabbinical courts said that the man has to give his wife a get, and he refused. Now, in the time where Beis Din had the ability to apply corporal punishment, a man could be whipped until he gives his wife a get. Nowadays, that option doesn't exist. So in Israel, they created a situation where if the rabbinical court says that a man has to give a wife a get, the secular court then backs him up and puts him in jail till he does. And this man said, I don't care, I'll die, I'm not giving her a get. And he was in jail, I think, 20 years. And he eventually died in jail. And I remember seeing a picture in the paper of his wife sitting Shiva. And she wasn't very happy. It was traditional. These were traditional people. They weren't religious people. They were traditional, but there are certain traditions that they kept. And she had to sit Shiva because they were officially still married after 20 years because he never gave her a get. How do you like that? So he said, I'm not giving her a get. Now the question is, why does the man give the get, not the wife? Anybody got the answer to that? Let's get this very clear. What do you say, Jared?
Well, the man acquires the woman.
Correct.
So it would follow that he has to.
Correct. In other words, when you get married, there's a transaction taking place under a chuppah. And for lack of better terms, the wife is transferring ownership of herself to her husband in exchange for the ring, which symbolizes the money. So for lack of a better term, I don't want to say she's selling herself, but that's essentially what she's doing. She is transferring jurisdiction of herself to her husband. Well, if the husband acquired her, husband gives the wife the ring. Harei at mikudeshes li. You are acquired to me. So the same way the husband is the one who does the acquiring, she now belongs to him. Even though in the reality, by the way, fellas, you belong to her. But she belongs to him, but then logically, from the halachic process, he has to release her. And therefore, if she doesn't release him, he releases her. Now, that's why the husband gives the get. By the way, there was a couple in Rabbi Emanuel Feldman has a story in his book that there was this couple in his community in Atlanta who separated. And the husband was a traveling businessman, and the wife moved out of town. She moved to St. Louis or something. And the couple separated, but they never got divorced. They never had a halachic divorce. They didn't have a civil divorce. They never had a halachic divorce. And they separated. And then the husband was a traveling salesman. And he said he comes into Rabbi Feldman, and he says to him, he says, Rabbi, my conscience is bothering me. I have to tell you that, I travel and I sell, and every once in a while, I pass through the town where Vivian lives in St. Louis, and sometimes, I'll spend the night there. So Feldman says, okay. He goes, no, I mean I spend the night there. He says, yeah, fine. He says, Rabbi, don't you understand? He says, yeah, that's 100%. You're 100% married. What's the problem? He goes, really? He goes, yeah, you never got divorced. You're 100% married. The fact you're separated doesn't mean. He says, Rabbi, you take the fun out of everything. So a person has to know that the get is essential. Now, look what happens next. Pasuk Beis. She leaves his house and she marries another man. Now, I'm going to tell you something very bizarre, gentlemen. Now, she marries another man. Now, the second guy then despises her. Well, it just sounds like a real winner here. V'kasav la sefer krisus, he gives her a divorce. V'nasan biyadav v'shulcha beis, he gives it to her and sends her from his house. O kiyamus ha'isha acharon, or the second guy dies. Asher lakachol isha. Either way, she married a second man, and then that marriage was terminated, either through a get or through the death of the husband. Then the Torah says, Lo yuchal ba'ala harishon asher shulcha l'shuv lakach l'yasalisha. The first husband can no longer marry her back. If she's married, once she marries a second man, the first husband can no longer remarry her. It is an abomination for him to remarry her. You should not contaminate the land. But now I'm going to tell you a shocker. Reuven married Leah. They got divorced. Leah married Shimon. And Shimon either died or they got divorced. She's not allowed to go back to Reuven, right? Okay. Reuven married Leah. Leah then had an illicit relationship with Shimon. Never got married. She is then allowed to go back to Reuven. If they got married legitimately, she can't go back to Reuven. If she had an illicit relationship with him, she is allowed to go back. Why?
She wasn't owned by the second guy.
And therefore what?
So
She's not owned by the first guy because he divorced her. We're talking about where he divorced her. He divorced her. She went, married a second guy. She marries a second guy. She can't go back to the first husband. If she just had an illicit relation with the second guy, she good. Why? Did you ever hear of Ron? Did you ever hear of Fritz Peterson and Ron Kikich?
The Yankees.
The Yankees.
Yeah.
Fritz Peterson and Ron Kikich were teammates on the Yankees back in the 80s. And they made a trade. You know, in baseball, they trade. Fritz Peterson and Ron Kikich traded families. They traded wives and families. I remember the whole deal. You get the kids and the dog who stayed, the dog stay with. You know, they traded families. It started out with Fritz Peterson and Mrs. Kikich driving home together, and the other way. That was famous. The Yankee teammates. They didn't stay teammates after a while. They were being booed everywhere. Nobody liked it. Even though everybody does that, and it's on all the tabloids. But nobody, when it's already a public thing like that, nobody liked it. Then in the end, Fritz Peterson and Mrs. Kikich stayed together, and Mike Kikich and Mrs. Peterson, they ended up getting divorced a couple of years later. But that was a big trade. The Torah here is concerned about wife swapping, legitimized wife swapping. If a woman marries Reuven, gets divorced, and marries Shimon and gets divorced, then she could go back to Reuven. So then there's no problem. Then wife swapping could take place. Legitimate wife swapping. Here, she's yours for a couple of months. Then we'll trade back later. And it's all kosher, because it's all with the divorce, with the get, and everything just right to get. Yeah, everybody live with everybody else. And therefore the Torah says that you can't do. What about the scenario where she goes and lives illicitly with Shimon? That's not likely. It doesn't happen that often. We don't have to make a safeguard. If it happens, it happened. But Jews didn't do that. A lot of people won't do anything unless it's halachically legitimate. It's got to be kosher by the letter of the law. So we don't have to, it's not a big concern. In a Jewish world, in a Torah world, that wasn't a concern. But in a Torah world where you could legitimize everything by the letter of the law, just give her a get tomorrow, one day yes, one day no. If that happens, then you end up with the possibility of legitimate wife swapping. That the Torah says is an abomination. They're interesting, right?
Can you say that last part again?
The concern is that you make it legitimate wife swapping, because you divorce your wife with a get, he divorces his wife with a get, you marry each one you marry each other for a while, then divorce each other with a get, then go back to your husband. Then you could trade her for somebody else. Each one keeps divorcing his wife and remarrying her. Legitimately. Everything along the way is legitimate.
That's so great.
And therefore the Torah says you can't do that. That's an abomination. Because you could have kosher bacon, like they have nowadays. There's kosher bacon. You know that? They have kosher bacon. They take some sort of, what do you call it? How do they make the kosher bacon? What's that? I know they have kosher bacon. I mean, they take meat and they somehow flavor it and everything else, and they call it kosher bacon. It's not really bacon. It's kosher bacon. It's a meat, but it tastes like bacon. So you make it. You made it all kosher. The famous story with the pig. The famous story with the pig. This little girl is sick. So you go to the doctor. So the doctor says that the only cure for her, she has to eat the liver from a pig. A Jewish girl, she has to eat the liver of a pig. So her father says, okay, pikuach nefesh, life-threatening situation, she's going to have to eat it. So he goes and he buys a pig. And he says, okay, Zalda, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to eat this. So she goes, Daddy, I'm not eating the pig unless you shecht it. He says, you don't have to shecht the pig. The pig's not kosher. You don't have to shecht it. No shechti, no eaty. Oh, brother. So he goes over to the local sheikhet. He goes over to the local sheikhet, and he says, hi, could you do me a favor? He looks at this guy. This is the guy from the shul, Davins and Minion. What are you doing with the pig? My daughter's sick. I need to. He says, you don't have to do me a favor, shecht it. She won't eat it if you don't shecht it. So he says, all right, for the girl, I'll shecht it. So he shechts the pig. So he comes home with, okay, he shechted it. Now you'll eat this. She goes, did he check the lungs? I don't have to check the lungs. He goes, yeah, no checky, no eating. He goes back to the sheikh. He says, my daughter is making me a sugar over here. Can you do me a favor? Can you tell humor? Check the lungs like you check on a cow. So he says, you don't have to check. Do me a favor. So he says, okay. He pulls out the lungs and he checks the lungs. I got bad news. He says, what's that? I have a serious shaila on one of these lungs over here. Right? He said, I don't know if this lung is yeah. So he takes the lungs and he goes to the local rabbi. Now you got the sheikhet who they're relying on for proper shechita, and a upstanding citizen knocking on the door of the Rav at 11 o'clock at night. And the Rav opens the door, hi, we have a shaila. What is this? He says, it's a lung from a chazer. Said, what is they explain the whole story to the Rav. Then he takes a look at it and he checks it, and the lawyer says, yeah, the pig's kosher. What did I just say? Understand? Say you can make anything kosher. You can make anything kosher. That's what the Torah is concerned about. Reb Tuvi, you were going to ask something before.
So if someone gets divorced, gives his wife the get, this is in the U.S., doesn't get a civil divorce, but wants to get remarried,
By halacha, it's not a problem.
he can go
Or by halacha, it's not a problem. Now I'll tell you another shocker. You see, there's a question like this. This is a famous dispute between Rabbi Moshe Feinstein and Rav Heitkin, who were two big poskim in America. Let's say a couple has a Jewish marriage with witnesses, with a rabbi, with witnesses, everything else. It just turns out that it's invalid. The witnesses are not Shabbos observant and so on and so forth. And the couple is living together for 25 years. And they have a child. The couple's married for 25 years. And then the couple has a civil divorce. And the woman then goes and marries another man. And then they have a child. No get, they have a child. The question becomes, is that child now considered a mamzer? Because this was a woman who never had a civil divorce, who never had a get. So Rabbi Henkin was of the opinion that since they got married and they were seen in the community as being married, that is considered a legitimate marriage, and that child would be a mamzer. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says since the original marriage was not a valid marriage, the second marriage is not a marriage. The child is not a mamzer because she was not a married woman. She was essentially a single woman who married the second man. You understand? That saved a lot of people. That psak of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein saved a lot of people who in the 20th century, where Jews left Judaism and Jews were getting married and then splitting up without a get, that saved a lot of people, a lot of aggravation, because otherwise those people are considered mamzerim. Like many balei tshuvas who come over and say, well, my parents were married, and then my parents split up and I'm born from the second marriage. And that creates a problem for the people. So not only that, I'm going to tell you even a bigger shocker. In Israel, the chief rabbinate would often, they may still be doing it to this day, I don't know, but there's certainly for sure that the chief rabbinate, when they were officiating at weddings in the left-wing kibbutzim and the anti-religious areas, they would purposely make sure that the marriage was not a halachic marriage, because there were so many rates, the rate of splitting up and adultery and everything else was so high that they chose the lesser of two evils. That better they should live together in sin but not be considered a married couple than marry them halachically, then they'll split up and then create all sorts of problems. And Reb Moshe Feinstein himself writes that when he was a Rav in Russia, so you had the older generation who were more traditional, and then you had the younger generation who had moved away from Judaism. And older generation, parents from the older generation would pressure the younger generation, at least when you married, at least have a kosher marriage. And Reb Moshe Feinstein writes, many Rabbonim, myself included, tried to influence the older generation, don't pressure them to have a kosher marriage. Because of this concern. Because of the concern that they're going to split up, that creates even more problems. Now, listen to the following question that Reb Moshe Feinstein had to deal with. A girl came to Reb Moshe Feinstein And she said to Rav Moshe Feinstein, my mother was married to a Jewish military man who was stationed in England. They had a 100% kosher marriage. And then my mother, they divorced, civil divorce. My mother married a second man, and I'm born from the second union. I've become a balas tshuva, and there's a boy that I was set up with, and I'm interested in getting married. My friend said that there might be an issue here, and that I should speak to you. So Moshe said, tell me the situation again. He said, my mother was married to an American, a Jewish American military man in England. There's no doubt that he was Jewish, and there's no doubt that the marriage was a good marriage, a kosher marriage with kosher witnesses. They split up with a civil divorce, and my mother then married a second man. I'm born from the second union. Is there an issue here? Rabbi Moshe Feinstein said, come back to me in 24 hours. She came back 24 hours. Doesn't sound so good, does it? Comes back 24 hours later, and Rabbi Moshe says, Mazel Tov, there's no problem whatsoever. Girl scampers off happily, and the guys who were sitting there, and they said, Rabbi, we heard what you heard. According to what she said, she's a mamzeris lamahadrin mina mahadrin. How could you permit that? So Moshe Feinstein said, you're right, you heard what I heard. But in the last 24 hours, I had somebody contact the Pentagon, and they checked the background of this Jewish soldier. He was a Jewish soldier in England, and they had a kosher marriage, 100%. But simultaneously, he had a wife and 2 daughters in the United States. The woman who married him clearly did not know that, because if she would have known that, she would not have married him. And therefore, the original marriage is a marriage under mistaken circumstances, in which case there was no marriage whatsoever. And therefore, there was no marriage. The second marriage is legitimate, and therefore the girl is not a mamzeris. That was the psak of Rav Moshe. And that shows you what a posek is. Instead of just shooting from the hip, if you could find the way, maybe there is some way out of this. Maybe there's some way out of this. There was another case. That's just what Rav Moshe Feinstein was. You also have to be Rav Moshe Feinstein to permit such things. But you have to make that. But that was Rav Moshe Feinstein, and therefore she could marry him 100%. Rav Moshe Feinstein was once at a chuppah. He was officiating at a wedding, and the mother of the groom said to Rav Moshe Feinstein, enter the chuppah. She said, I'm sorry to tell you this, it's really bothering me, but the boy's father is not really the father. And Rav Moshe Feinstein turned to her and he said, the halacha says you do not have any reliability about your son in this regard, which is the halacha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu v'cholam borei pri hagafen. Just like that. Just like that. That's the halacha. There's nothing to talk about. So they had a guy in the United States military. There was a Jewish man who was also in the military, and his plane crashed somewhere in the deserts of Arizona. Apparently, there's a lot of desert in Arizona. His plane crashed somewhere in the desert of Arizona, and they couldn't find the plane. Couldn't find the plane. So the local rabbi, who was Orthodox, contacted Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, what's the status of his wife? The husband disappears, the wife is an aguna. She can't marry somebody else because there's no... So Rabbi Moshe said she can't marry, she's an aguna. Okay. About 4 years later, the rabbi gets a call. The local rabbi gets a call. Hello. Yeah, this is Moshe Feinstein speaking. I've been in regular contact with the United States military over the last 4 years. I spoke to them now, or whoever his agent was spoke to them. They found the plane. They found the body. Now she could remarry. That means that a posek is not just a guy who's just standing there shooting. You come in. If you care, sometimes you can't find a way to. Sometimes there is no legitimate leniency, but you can at least try to find it. If there's no legitimate leniency, there have been heartbreaking cases where the posek has to paskin, and it is a situation that's tragic. But there are other situations where before you create the tragedy, let's see if you could get out of it. That's the idea. So here you have the idea of the get being something that has to be a kosher, legitimate get in order to dissolve the marriage. Okay, now one more point very quickly. Not very quickly. Ki yikach ish chadasha, 5 lines from the bottom. Ki yikach ish isha chadasha, when a man gets married, lo yetzei bat tzava, he does not go out to the army, v'lo yavar alav l'chol davar, naki yeh lebeso shona echas, he should be free to be in his home for a year, v'simach es ishto asher lakach, and he should gladden his wife. Now Rashi points out over here, I want you to see the Rashi inside. Rashi makes sure to point out bottom line of Rashi and the left column on page 1058. Page 1058, bottom line of Rashi, left column. V'simach. Rashi tells us, what is this word v'simach? Rashi says, Yesamach es ishto. He should gladden his wife. The Targumo, the Aramaic is v'yechede yos itzei. V'hametargem, the one who translates v'yechede im itzei, one who is happy with his wife, to'ehu. He's making a mistake. What does Rashi want to prevent over here? Person reads this pasuk and he says, guy gets married, v'simach es ishto, should be happy with his wife. The two of you should celebrate together. False, wrong. That's not what the Torah says. V'simach ishto means you have to gladden your wife. Now, this is the first year of marriage. What happens? Then there's the countdown. 10, 9, 8, yahoo! I don't have to make her happy anymore, right? Because you got through the first year. Shana Rishona. And there are halachas in Shana Rishona. Husband's not away to be away from his wife overnight, and he needs her permission to leave over. Yeah, there are all sorts of halachas. What's going on? What is the Torah emphasizing? What's the Torah teaching us? It seems to be a very fundamental concept when it comes to marriage. It's not a joke. Torah is teaching that in the marriage relationship, there is something in the wife has a need to have something established, which is that the husband is fully devoted to her. If a man would do the first year properly, the nature of women are always testing their husbands. They're always testing, little subtle tests, which they do either consciously or subconsciously, to check to see how was supper? How do you like the outfit? They're always checking. Why? You want to make sure the husband is the center of her life. A man, generally, the way the world used to work, a man had a life outside the home. So he has a life outside the home, and he's got a wife. The wife only has him. And therefore, she wants to know, why is it that anniversaries, everyone knows, who is it always making an issue over the anniversary, the husband or the wife? The stereotype is the husband who forgets the anniversary, right? How come they never have the stereotype of the wife forgetting the anniversary? Because she doesn't. You know, it's our anniversary. What does she want? She wants to make sure you're not you're happy with that choice you made, or you're not. We're celebrating. Is this a good day for you, or it's not a good day for you? Well, it's not a good day because I've been spending money on a restaurant. Is it a good day for you, or it's not great day, best day? It's like the guy comes over, the guy says, congratulations, I know this is the happiest day of your life. The guy says, yeah, but boss, I'm not getting married till tomorrow. He said, yeah, right. What is it? The nature of the relationship is that the husband has to establish something. If a man would do Shana Rishona properly, his wife would never test him again. The foundation would be so solid that she wouldn't have any doubt for the rest of her life. There's no doubt. I know I got it, because it was done properly. We don't do it properly nowadays. Therefore, it's 50 years, 60 years of establishing that. And if a man theoretically would do it properly, he would never be tested, because he has to understand my job in my first year of marriage has nothing. It's all about her. It has nothing to do with me. It's all about her. V'simach es isha. You have to gladden her, not gladden yourself. That's what the Torah is teaching. That's why. Otherwise, why would the Torah emphasize that? By the way, you'll notice that the Torah speaks twice. The written Torah speaks twice. Take that, feminists. The written Torah speaks twice about the marriage relationship. And both times it's the husband's obligation to the wife. How do you like that? In Parashat Mishpatim, it says whatever the marriage obligations are. And over here it talks about gladdening her during the first year. Never talks about what the wife has to do for the husband. That the oral brought down in the Gemara, what a wife's obligations are. The Torah talks about the man's obligation. How do you like that? How do you like that? And this is if we're such a chauvinist, then I would have written it differently. Okay. Take a look at one last point. This is also one of the difficult to understand mitzvahs. On page 1062. Bottom of page 1062. Ki yeshu achim yachdav. Two brothers are living together, not literally living together. They're in the same world at the same time. Umeis echad mehem, one of them dies. Uben ein lo. He does not have any children. Lo siya eishes hameis achutza leishar. The wife is not allowed to marry another man. Yevama yovo aleha. Her brother-in-law should marry her. Ulakachalo leisha v'yibma. This is the famous mitzvah of yibbum. There's a famous mitzvah called yibbum. And this involves a man dies childless, and he has a brother. So then they go through the yibbum ceremony. Now, we're going to continue with this tomorrow, and we're going to finish this tomorrow. Will be the last one that we do, and then we're going to go to Parshas Kisavo. But it's a very strange mitzvah because it's a very difficult to understand mitzvah because normally a man can't marry his brother's wife. If Reuven dies and he has children, then his wife is prohibited to his brother Shimon. Here, where he dies without children, not only she's permitted, but by Torah law, it's a mitzvah to marry her. And if he doesn't marry her, then they do the ceremony called chalitza. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Shoeless Joe Jackson. Call it. I had a title for it. Call it something misconceptions. Correcting misconceptions. Okay. See you tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
When Daniel calls, when Daniel comes,
Yeah.
when you see Daniel, please tell him to email me.
Okay.
I want to know when he's, or at least find out when he's leaving.